The Retribution moved through space like a blade, its black hull reflecting no light. Commander Wilson stood on the bridge, watching as they approached the uninhabited Voidborn system designated for demonstration. Behind his ship came the rest of the human fleet, a wall of warships stretching as far as the eye could see. "We've reached the deployment point," Commander reported his second-in-command. Wilson nodded. "Status of the Prometheus device." "Ready for activation, sir." Wilson took a deep breath. The weapon they carried could destroy worlds. He knew the weight of what was about to happen would stay with him forever. "The Voidborn have refused our final offer to surrender," he announced to the bridge crew. "We will now demonstrate our resolve." On the Alliance flagship, Ambassador Telk and other representatives watched on screens linked to human ships. No one spoke. No one could find words adequate for this moment. "Deploying Prometheus," Wilson said. From the Retribution's main launch bay, a small probe emerged. It was surprisingly tiny for something so deadly. The probe accelerated toward the system's star, then disappeared in a flash of light as it jumped to close range. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the star began to pulse, its surface rippling like water. Massive solar flares erupted, growing larger by the second. "The chain reaction has begun," reported a human scientist. "Star destabilization at 30% and climbing." The Alliance representatives watched in stunned silence as the star began to tear itself apart. First, the outer layers were thrown off in massive waves of plasma. Then the core began to collapse. "It's reconfiguring the star's fusion process," explained a human officer to the watching aliens, "essentially turning it into a bomb." When the star finally erupted, it wasn't a typical supernova. It was something more controlled, more directed. The blast wave expanded outward, but somehow curved to avoid the observation fleet while completely engulfing the inner planets of the system. In less than an hour, where 7 planets had existed, there was nothing but a spreading cloud of superheated gas and debris. The star itself was reduced to a fraction of its former size, now burning with a strange blue light. "Demonstration complete," Wilson reported to Earth Command. "Transmitting results to the Voidborn leadership now." The message was simple: surrender or face extinction. For 3 tense hours, no response came. The human fleet maintained position, ready to jump to the Voidborn home system if necessary. Wilson had his hand over the command that would send them on that final mission when the transmission arrived. The Voidborn Supreme Commander, a massive creature with pale skin and too many eyes, appeared on screen. For the first time in the war, the enemy spoke directly to humans. "We surrender," it said, the words clearly difficult for it to form. "Total. Unconditional." Within 24 hours, Voidborn forces across the galaxy began to withdraw. Ships returned to their space. Occupied worlds were abandoned. The war that had ravaged the galaxy for years ended not with a final battle, but with the fear of what such a battle would bring. 1 month later, Ambassador Telk stood in the rebuilt Alliance Council chamber. The mood was mixed, joy at victory tempered by unease about the future. "Humanity saved us," Telk said to the gathered representatives. "But at what cost? They've changed the galaxy forever. The knowledge that stars themselves can be weaponized cannot be unknown." The Lorian representative nodded. "And now we must live alongside a species that was willing to use such weapons. How do we move forward?" Admiral Grant entered the chamber, representing Earth at the peace conference. He looked tired but satisfied. "The war is over," he said simply. "The Voidborn are confined to their home system, under quarantine by our fleet. They will never threaten anyone again." "And the Prometheus weapon?" Telk asked quietly. "Dismantled," Grant replied, "but not forgotten. We hope to never need such things again." Later, walking through the rebuilt gardens of the Alliance capital, Telk found himself alone with Grant. "Your people saved the galaxy," Telk admitted, "but you terrified it too." Grant looked up at the stars, visible through the garden dome. "That's humanity, Ambassador. We build and destroy. We create art and weapons. We love deeply and fight fiercely. A dangerous ally, Telk observed. But a loyal one, Grant replied. Remember that. As night fell, Telk reflected on the changed galaxy. The Alliance had begged for help, and humanity had brought total war. Now they all lived with the consequences of getting exactly what they had asked for. The emergency alarms on Earth Defense Headquarters blared as General Adams burst into the command center. The massive screen showed a scene of absolute devastation. Titan, humanity's largest colony in the Saturn system, was under heavy attack. Status report, Adams demanded. Voidborn strike force hit without warning, sir, reported a pale-faced officer. They bypassed our outer defenses using some kind of new cloaking technology. The screen showed Titan's main dome breached, the atmosphere venting into space. Civilian evacuation ships were being targeted by Voidborn vessels. The death toll counter in the corner of the screen ticked upward relentlessly. 500,000. 750,000. 1 million. Adam's face hardened. They deliberately targeted civilians. They're sending us a message. President Karim entered the command center, her face grim. How bad? Current estimates put civilian casualties at nearly 2 million. Adams replied. The colony is lost. For a long moment, no one spoke. 2 million lives. The worst single attack on humanity since the Unification Wars. They've made their choice, Karim said quietly. Activate the final response protocol. The command center went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Madam President, Adams said carefully, once we deploy Prometheus, there's no going back. The Voidborn targeted our civilians specifically, Karim replied, her voice like steel. They wanted to break our will. Instead, they've removed our last restraints. On the Alliance flagship, Ambassador Telk was meeting with Commander Wilson when the news about Titan arrived. He watched the human's face transform from professional calm to something much darker. Commander Wilson, came a transmission from Earth. You have new orders. Priority Alpha. Wilson listened, then nodded once. Understood. Retribution is designated as the delivery vehicle. We'll depart immediately. What's happening? Telk asked, suddenly afraid. Wilson turned to him, eyes cold. Humanity has authorized the use of our final option. You should inform your leadership. Hours later, the Alliance Council gathered in emergency session. Ambassador Telk stood before them, relaying what little he knew. The humans call it Project Prometheus. From what I've gathered, it's some kind of weapon beyond anything they've used so far. We must stop them, said the Lorian representative. Whatever they're planning violates all galactic laws of warfare. The chamber doors opened, and General Adams walked in, his uniform bearing the marks of someone who hadn't slept in days. You cannot stop us, he said flatly. The retribution is already on its way to the Voidborn home system. This is madness, shouted the manted representative. What weapon could possibly justify? The Voidborn killed 2 million civilians on Titan. Adams interrupted. Children, families, non-combatants. They breached the domes and watched them suffocate or freeze. He approached the central podium, bringing up images that made several council members turn away in horror. This is what they did. Not to soldiers, not to military targets, to families. Even so, Telk said desperately, there must be limits to warfare, or we become no better than them. Adams laughed, a hollow sound with no humor. Limits? You speak of limits now. Where were these concerns when you begged us to save you? We didn't know what we were asking for, Telk admitted. You knew exactly what you were asking for, Adams countered. You've studied our history. You know what total war means to humanity. The weapon, pressed the Telsian representative. What does Prometheus do? Adam's face was carved from stone. It destabilizes stars. The council chamber erupted in panic. The ability to destroy an entire solar system was beyond comprehension. You can't. Telk cried. Billions of lives. We've given the Voidborn one chance to surrender unconditionally, Adams said. If they refuse, we'll demonstrate Prometheus on an uninhabited system in their territory. If they still refuse, we target their homeworld. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. You begged for our help, he said, looking back at the stunned council. Now witness what total war truly means. The Great Hall of the Alliance headquarters had never held so many human ships before. The massive view screen showed hundreds of warships gathering at 5 different staging points. Each fleet was larger than the entire remaining Alliance Navy. Grand Admiral Thompson stood before the assembled Alliance leaders, his uniform crisp and decorated with medals from Earth's previous conflicts. At 70 years old, he had been called out of retirement to lead humanity's war effort. Operation 5 Points of Light begins tomorrow, Thompson announced, his deep voice filling the hall. The largest coordinated military offensive in human history. The holographic display shifted to show the Voidborn-controlled territories. 5 arrows pushed deep into enemy space from different directions. Each fleet will drive toward a specific target, Thompson explained. We will retake the Brel system, the Lorian colonies, the Mantid homeworlds, the Telgian mining outposts, and the Proxima trade routes. Ambassador Telk studied the plan. You're attacking all fronts simultaneously. Even our military at full strength could not have attempted this. Thompson's face remained stern. The Voidborn have never faced an enemy that fights like humans. They're about to learn. The first fleet jumped into the Brel system the next day. Once a garden world, Brel Prime was now a smoking ruin under Voidborn control. Commander Wilson led the attack, his ships forming a tight formation. All ships, implement Operation Scorched Earth, Wilson ordered. No prisoners, no mercy. What followed shocked even the hardened Alliance military observers. Human ships systematically destroyed everything the Voidborn had built. Orbital platforms, surface bases, resource collection facilities, all were reduced to atoms. When Voidborn reinforcements arrived, they were met with waves of nuclear mines and autonomous hunter-killer drones. They're targeting the supply lines first, noted a Telgian officer watching the battle. Cutting off the Voidborn from reinforcement before engaging the main force. In the Lorian colonies, the Second Fleet used a different approach. Lieutenant Anna Davis led a small team on what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Their target, the Voidborn wormhole generator that allowed enemy ships to jump directly into Lorian space. Activating stealth systems, Davis said calmly as their small craft approached the massive Voidborn structure. Remember, we only get one shot at this. Her team of 20 volunteers moved through the Voidborn structure, planting charges at key points. Alarms began to sound as they were finally detected. We're compromised, reported her second-in-command. There's no way back to the ship. Davis nodded, her face showing no fear. Then we make it count. She activated her comm link to the fleet. This is Lieutenant Davis. Target is prepped. We're going to detonate manually. Back on the command ship, Admiral Carter received the message. Lieutenant, we can find another way. Negative, sir, came Davis's steady reply. The charges must be triggered in sequence. We'll handle it. The Admiral watched the tactical display, knowing he was sending these soldiers to their deaths. Understood, Lieutenant. Your sacrifice will be remembered. Davis and her team fought their way to the central chamber of the generator. Surrounded by Voidborn troops, they triggered the explosives. The resulting chain reaction destroyed the wormhole generator and created a temporary black hole that swallowed a third of the Voidborn fleet. Similar scenes played out across all 5 fronts. Human forces pushed forward with a determination that bordered on fanaticism. They implemented strategies that the Alliance had considered too extreme. Poisoning atmospheres to deny the Voidborn resources, collapsing unstable stars to destroy enemy staging areas, sacrificing their own troops to gain tactical advantages. In the Alliance headquarters, the leaders watched as territory began to shift back from red to blue on the grand map. For the first time in years, they were winning. "The humans fight like nothing we've ever seen," said the manted representative, mandibles clicking in agitation. "They sacrifice thousands of their own to gain victory." Ambassador Telk nodded slowly. "They call it acceptable losses. Their historical records show they've always fought this way." "Can they be controlled once the war is over?" asked a Lorian diplomat quietly. No one had an answer. Captain Jack Reed walked through the massive shipyard orbiting Mars, his footsteps echoing on the metal walkway. Below him, thousands of workers swarmed over the frame of the largest warship ever built by human hands. The Planet Cracker-class dreadnought stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its black hull absorbing light like a hole in space. "Impressive, isn't it?" Reed said to the small group of Alliance representatives following him. 6 months ago, this was a civilian construction yard building colony ships. Dr. Nev, the Lorian scientist, blinked her crystalline eyes in disbelief. "You built this in 6 months." Reed smiled. "We've built 7 so far. This is the 8th. The Alliance delegation fell silent. In their culture, a single warship of this size would take years to construct. "How is this possible?" asked the Telsian diplomat. "Total war," Reed answered simply. "Every factory, every shipyard, every research lab on Earth and throughout the solar system is now dedicated to one purpose: winning this war." He led them past a section where massive weapon systems were being installed. Workers in exoskeletons moved turrets the size of small buildings into place with practiced efficiency. "Are those gravitational disruptors?" Dr. Nev asked, pointing to a particular weapon. Reed nodded. "They can tear apart anything at the molecular level. We had the technology for decades but banned it after the Unification Wars. Now all the old weapons are back in production." The delegation exchanged worried glances. Miles away, in Earth's Movav Desert, another Alliance group toured what had once been a civilian technology campus. Now it was a drone production facility that stretched for kilometers in every direction. "We produce 10,000 combat drones per day here," explained Director Morgan, a stern woman with graying hair. "Each one can operate independently or as part of a swarm." "What is their purpose?" asked a manted representative. "Whatever we need them to be," Morgan replied. "Scouts, fighters, bombers, or suicide units." In low Earth orbit, Admiral Grant showed Ambassador Telk the newest military academy. Young men and women trained in zero-gravity combat chambers, learning to fight in environments that would kill most species. "Every citizen between 18 and 45 has been given basic military training," Grant explained. "Those with aptitude are selected for specialized roles." "Your entire civilization has transformed," Telk said quietly. "This is beyond anything we imagined." Grant's face remained expressionless. "This is what total war means, Ambassador. Every resource, every mind, every hand turns toward one goal." Later that day, Dr. Nev slipped away from her group and used her access pass to enter a research laboratory in Geneva. What she found there made her crystalline skin pale to near transparency. Scientists worked on what appeared to be a tear in space itself, a shimmering portal that showed glimpses of something else. The equations on the nearby screens dealt with dimensional physics far beyond anything the Alliance had developed. "You shouldn't be here," said a voice behind her. Dr. Nev turned to find Director Morgan watching her. "What is this?" Nev asked, her voice trembling. "Insurance," Morgan replied. "If conventional weapons fail against the Voidborn, we'll use unconventional ones." "You're weaponizing dimensional physics," Nev whispered. "That could destabilize reality itself." Morgan's expression didn't change. "If that's what it takes to win, yes." When the Alliance delegation departed Earth the next day, they carried with them detailed reports of humanity's war production, but also a growing sense of unease. In the shuttle back to Alliance space, Ambassador Telk reviewed the numbers again. Thousands of warships under construction, millions of troops in training, weapons that could crack planets or worse. "We may have made a terrible mistake," The manted representative clicked softly. Telk stared out the viewport at the receding Earth, now surrounded by a halo of shipyards and weapon platforms. "We asked for their help," he said. "We begged for it. Now we must live with our choice." Behind them, Earth continued its transformation. The industrial machine of humanity, once awakened to total war, would not easily be put back to sleep. The Alliance observation deck fell silent as the human fleet emerged from jump points near the Proxima front line. It wasn't the size of the fleet that shocked the alien observers. Though 50 warships was impressive, it was their design. Black, angular, and bristling with weapons, the human vessels looked nothing like the sleek, defensive ships of the Alliance. Commander Wilson stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, his face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. 3 months of preparation had led to this moment. The Voidborn had established a major staging area in this system, using a captured moon as their base. "All ships report ready, Commander," his second-in-command announced. Wilson nodded. "Begin Operation Thunderstrike." Across the command channel, captains acknowledged the order. Wilson glanced at the Alliance liaison officer on his bridge, a blue-skinned Telgian named Krav. The alien looked nervous. "You might want to brace yourself," Wilson suggested. "This won't be like the battles you're used to." The human fleet split into 3 battle groups. While the main force moved toward the Voidborn fleet, 2 smaller groups circled wide, moving into flanking positions. On the Alliance observation deck, Ambassador Telk watched with the other representatives. "What are they doing?" asked the Lorian diplomat. "They're dividing their forces against a superior enemy." Telk had no answer. The Voidborn ships, massive organic-looking vessels that reminded him of deep-sea predators, began moving to intercept the main human fleet. The humans struck first. Without warning, thousands of small objects detached from the flanking battle groups. "Mines," someone whispered. "They're seeding the space with nuclear mines." The main human fleet opened fire at extreme range, not with energy weapons, but with missiles, hundreds of them. The Voidborn deployed countermeasures, destroying many, but others got through, exploding against their shields. Then came the human drones, small automated attack craft that swarmed toward the Voidborn fleet like angry insects. "This is barbaric," the manted representative said, mandibles clicking in distress. "There's no skill in this, no honor." As the Voidborn ships maneuvered to avoid the drones, several moved into the minefield. The observation deck's screens automatically dimmed as nuclear explosions lit up space. Wilson watched dispassionately as the first wave of Voidborn ships died. "Launch the second wave of drones," he ordered, "and prepare the EMP warheads." The Voidborn, recovering from their surprise, began to coordinate their defense. 3 massive carrier ships released swarms of their own fighter craft. "They're adapting," Wilson noted. Phase 2. 5 human destroyers suddenly accelerated to maximum speed, heading directly for the largest concentration of Voidborn ships. "They're going to collide," Krav gasped. Instead, at the last moment, the destroyers released their payloads, massive EMP bombs that detonated in the heart of the Voidborn formation. The electromagnetic pulse washed over the organic-based Voidborn ships, shorting out their neural systems. The affected ships drifted, powerless. "All ships, engage at will," Wilson ordered. "Show no mercy." The human fleet fell upon the disabled Voidborn vessels, like wolves on wounded prey. Railguns punctured hulls. Lasers sliced through critical systems. Boarding parties planted nuclear charges inside the largest ships. On the observation deck, the Alliance representatives watched in stunned silence. This wasn't warfare as they knew it. There were no challenges, no ship-to-ship duels, no honor. This was slaughter. "They're targeting the moon base," someone reported. Wilson's voice came over the command channel. "All ships clear the orbital path. Preparing to deploy planet cracker missiles." 5 massive missiles launched from the Retribution, each powerful enough to break a small planet apart. They struck the void-born moon base simultaneously. The observation deck went completely dark as the moon. A chunk of rock nearly 1,000 kilometers in diameter shattered into millions of pieces. When the screens came back online, there was nothing left of the void-born base but a spreading field of debris. Not a single enemy ship remained intact. Ambassador Telk turned away, his 3 eyes blinking rapidly. "This is what we asked for," he whispered. "This is total war." In the corner, a human liaison officer nodded grimly. "This was just the beginning, Ambassador. The real war hasn't even started yet." The underground chambers of the Earth Defense Council in Geneva were designed to withstand any attack. Built deep beneath the Alps after the Unification Wars, they represented humanity's determination to survive. Today, they hosted perhaps the most important meeting in Earth's history. Admiral Grant stood before the gathered leaders of Earth, Mars, and the Jovian colonies. His uniform was still wrinkled from the fast journey back from Alliance space. Behind him, the Alliance's formal request for help glowed on the massive screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Grant began, "the Galactic Alliance has officially requested our full military intervention against the void-born threat." Defense Minister Rodriguez leaned forward. "They want us to deploy total war protocols, after 3 years of ignoring our advice." "They're desperate," Grant replied. "The Voidborn have destroyed 7 more systems in the past month alone." General Adams stood up and activated the main display. "Before we vote, you need to see what we're facing." The screen changed to show footage that the Alliance had provided. A garden world, once home to billions, now burned. Cities were being harvested by massive void-born ships. The aliens weren't just conquering, they were consuming entire populations. The room fell silent as they watched civilians being rounded up and processed. No one spoke when the footage ended. President Karim finally broke the silence. "The Alliance rejected our methods because they seemed too harsh. Now they see the alternative." "The Voidborn don't follow rules of engagement," Grant said. "They don't take prisoners. They don't distinguish between military and civilian targets." Minister Chen shook her head. "Total war hasn't been declared since the unification. Do we truly want to unleash that again? If we don't," General Adams said quietly, "there won't be any aliens left to save." President Karim looked around the table. "Let's vote. All in favor of implementing the Wartime Production and Military Expansion Act, say aye." The vote was unanimous. "May God have mercy on us all," someone whispered. Within hours, the gears of Earth's war machine began to turn. In orbit, civilian freighters were being retrofitted with weapon mounts. On Mars, the massive factories that produced civilian goods shifted to military production. Throughout the solar system, reserve forces were activated. Captain Lisa Miller watched from the command deck of Space Station Armstrong as her ship, the destroyer Thunderchild, received its upgrade package. New weapon systems, enhanced shields, and experimental drive technology were being installed. "Captain, you've got a visitor," her first officer reported. Miller turned to see Admiral Grant entering the bridge. She saluted sharply. "At ease, Captain," Grant said. "Your ship will be ready in 48 hours. You'll lead the first wave." Miller nodded. "My crew is ready, sir." Grant looked out at the massive fleet gathering in Earth orbit. Ships of all sizes, some still showing the markings of mining companies or passenger lines, were being transformed into weapons of war. "The Alliance doesn't understand what they've asked for," Grant said quietly. "They think warfare is about honor and rules. We know better." "Will they accept our methods?" Miller asked. Grant's face hardened. "They don't have a choice anymore. The Voidborn have seen what happens when you fight with one hand tied behind your back. Now they'll see what happens when humanity fights with both hands free." Throughout the solar system, the message spread. For the first time since the Unification Wars, humanity was entering total war. On Mars, production lines worked around the clock. In the asteroid belt, mining ships converted to missile platforms. On Jupiter's moons, research labs unlocked weapon technologies that had been banned for decades. When Miller's ship finally undocked, it was just one of hundreds. As they formed up and prepared to jump to Alliance space, she sent one final message to Earth. Thunder Child to command. First wave is away. The hunt begins. In the Geneva bunker, President Karim watched the fleets depart. They begged for our help, she said quietly. Now we bring them total war. The massive viewing screen in the Alliance High Command chamber showed nothing but bad news. Red markers spread across the star map like a disease, each one representing another system lost to the Voidborn invasion. Admiral James Grant stood tall, his weathered face showing no emotion as the other alien representatives muttered among themselves. 3 years had passed since humanity had first offered their military expertise to the Galactic Alliance. 3 years of being ignored, undermined, and dismissed. Now the proud Alliance fleet was a shadow of its former self, reduced to barely 30% of its fighting strength. 7 more border systems have fallen in the last month alone, announced High Commander Telk, his blue skin turning almost pale as he spoke. The tall, thin alien's 4 arms gripped the podium tightly. The Voidborn are advancing faster than we can evacuate civilians. Admiral Grant cleared his throat. Perhaps now the Alliance would consider implementing some of Earth's tactical suggestions. The room fell silent. The Lorian representative, with her crystal-like skin, made a sound like breaking glass, their species equivalent of a scoff. Human tactics are barbaric, she said. We do not target civilian infrastructure or use nuclear weapons in space battles. Grant kept his temper in check. The Voidborn have no such reservations. They're not fighting by your rules. The mantid representative clicked his mandibles together. We have standards of warfare that have kept peace in the galaxy for 10,000 years. And how are those standards working against an enemy that eats your children? Grant asked quietly. The room erupted in angry voices. Grant had crossed a line by mentioning the footage they'd all seen. Voidborn ships harvesting civilian populations for food. The horror was still fresh in everyone's minds. High Commander Telk raised all 4 of his hands for silence. When the room quieted, he looked directly at Grant with all 3 of his large eyes. You must understand our position, Admiral. Your species has been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years. Your methods of warfare are concerning to us. Grant nodded. I understand your concerns, but I also understand that at the current rate of Voidborn advance, the Alliance has perhaps 6 months before your core worlds are threatened. The tactical officer, a Telsian with scaled skin, reluctantly confirmed this assessment with a nod. The Admiral's timeline is, unfortunately, accurate. High Commander Telk's shoulders slumped. The proud leader suddenly looked ancient and tired. Show them the Brel system footage, he ordered. The main screen changed to show a once beautiful garden world. Now it was a blackened husk, its oceans boiled away, its surface cracked and burning. Billions had lived there just weeks ago. The Voidborn are no longer just conquering. They're consuming entire worlds, Telk said. They're accelerating their attacks. The room was silent as the terrible images played out. Grant watched the alien representatives. He could see the moment when their resolve broke, when pride gave way to survival. Commander Telk turned to face Grant directly. Admiral, I have been authorized by the Alliance High Council to formally request Earth's full military intervention. Grant's expression remained neutral, but inside, a cold feeling spread through his chest. He knew what was coming. We are officially requesting that humanity deploy its total war doctrine, Telk said, the alien words sounding strange from his translator. The other representatives looked down or away. None wanted to meet Grant's eyes. You understand what you're asking for, Grant said quietly. Once we commit to total war, we cannot easily pull back. The Earth Defense Council will want absolute confirmation that this request is official. Telk pressed a button, and a formal document appeared on Grant's tablet. The request is unanimous. We need humanity's help, Admiral Grant. The Alliance begs for it. Grant nodded slowly, already calculating how fast he could return to Earth with this news. "I'll take this to my government immediately." As he left the chamber, Grant heard the Lorian representative whisper to another alien, "What have we just done?" Grant wondered the same thing. The galaxy had no idea what humanity was capable of when the gloves came off. They were about to find out. The emergency alarms blared across every military base and government building on Earth. It wasn't a drill. For the first time in human history, an alien fleet had entered the solar system. "Multiple unknown vessels passing Neptune's orbit," announced General Porter, his weathered face illuminated by the red emergency lights of the United Earth Council chamber. "Their technology is like nothing we've seen before." The room fell silent as the massive screens showed the approaching ships. They were damaged, badly. Scorched hulls, flickering energy shields, and debris trailing behind them told a story of recent battle. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," said Communications Director Wilson. "It appears to be a request for help." Dr. Marcus Reed, Earth's top first contact specialist, stepped forward. "Let's hear it." The screen flickered, revealing a humanoid figure with pale blue skin and large, sad eyes. Dark patterns marked its face like ancient runes. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in surprisingly good English, "I am Ambassador Talon of the Vesh Confederation, or what remains of it." The creature paused, seeming to gather strength. "We come seeking your aid. Our civilization is being systematically destroyed by a force known as the Dominion. 17 other species across 3 galactic arms have already fallen." President Keller frowned. "Why come to us? We've barely set foot on Mars." Talon's expression shifted to something between fear and respect. "Because your world is feared, President Keller. Earth is classified as a death world. Too dangerous to contact. Your species evolved on a planet that would kill most sentient life forms. You are resilient in ways we are not." General Porter leaned forward. "You want soldiers?" "No." Talon shook his head. "We need your minds, your strategies. The Dominion has better technology, but they fight according to ancient, predictable patterns. We heard rumors that humans think differently." Dr. Reed approached the screen. "Show us what we're dealing with." The image changed to footage that made even the hardened military personnel in the room flinch. Cities burning, entire planets being mined to their cores, alien civilians being herded into massive ships, never to return. "They do not merely conquer," explained Talon. "They consume. They strip worlds of resources and populations. Those who resist face extinction. Those who surrender face something worse." President Keller turned to her advisors. "Could this be a trick? Some kind of test?" Dr. Reed studied the aliens' body language. "I don't think so. Their ships are genuinely damaged. And look at the radiation burns on Ambassador Talon's skin. That's not makeup." "Even if it's real," General Porter argued, "this isn't our fight. We have our own problems." "It will become our fight," Dr. Reed said quietly. "If these Dominion forces have conquered 17 species, how long before they find us? Earth isn't as hidden as we'd like to think." President Keller stood, her decision made. "Ambassador Talon, we will need time to discuss your request, but you and your people are welcome to seek shelter in our system while we deliberate." Talon bowed deeply. "Thank you, President. But I must warn you, we were followed. The Dominion will find us, and when they do, they will find you too. We have days, perhaps weeks." After the transmission ended, the council erupted into heated debate. Some wanted nothing to do with an alien war. Others saw both moral obligation and strategic advantage in helping. Dr. Reed sat quietly, reviewing the footage of Dominion attacks. These weren't just conquerors. They were predators, and predators never stopped hunting. "Madam President," he finally said, silencing the room, "the Vesh didn't just bring us a war today. They brought us a warning. We can help them now, or face the Dominion alone later." President Keller nodded slowly. "Contact Admiral Hayes. Tell her to prepare Earth's defenses and draft a response plan. She looked around the room, her expression grim but determined. If there's one thing humans know how to do, it's fight back against impossible odds. 3 days after the Vesh arrival, Earth's top military leaders gathered in an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. Maps of the solar system glowed on digital screens, now marked with the positions of the damaged Vesh fleet in orbit around Earth. Admiral Diane Hayes paced the room, her gray hair cut short, her eyes sharp as she studied the tactical displays. She had been called back from retirement, the only officer who had ever won a war while outnumbered 5-1. "Let me be clear," she said, facing the assembled generals and admirals. "The Vesh technology is approximately 200 years ahead of ours. The Dominion tech is another 100 years beyond that. We're bringing knives to a gunfight." "Then why fight at all?" asked General Rodriguez. Admiral Hayes pointed to footage showing a Dominion ship harvesting an entire moon for materials. "Because they're coming anyway. The question isn't if we fight, it's how." The doors opened, and Fletcher Williams walked in, carrying old books under his arm. The military historian looked out of place with his wrinkled clothes and messy hair. "You asked for unconventional thinking," Fletcher said, dropping the books on the table. "These are Earth's greatest guerrilla warfare campaigns. Vietnam, Afghanistan, the Finn Resistance, when smaller forces defeated larger ones through creativity." Admiral Hayes nodded. "We need to understand our enemy. Talon, please join us." The Vesh ambassador entered nervously. "How can I help?" "Tell us about Dominion tactics," Hayes said. "Not their technology, their thinking." Talon blinked his large eyes. "They follow the ancient Kar Thurna battle code. 3 waves of attack, overwhelming force, no retreat. Their commanders never sacrifice themselves." Fletcher scribbled notes furiously. "They value order, predictability, honor in a twisted way." "Yes," Talon agreed. "They consider themselves superior because they follow these codes while destroying us." Admiral Hayes smiled for the first time. "Then we have something they don't expect. Humans fight dirty." In a massive hangar, Captain Jack Torres watched as human engineers worked alongside Vesh technicians. They were retrofitting Earth's missiles with Vesh shield-penetrating technology. "Will it work?" he asked Dr. Lisa Wong, the lead engineer. She wiped sweat from her forehead. "Their shields operate on frequencies we never imagined. But yes, these modifications should get our weapons through." Torres picked up one of the modified missiles. It was still Earth-made, but now glowed with blue Vesh energy patterns. "We have 6 days before the Dominion scout ships arrive," Dr. Wong continued. "Not enough time to build new weapons, but enough to modify what we have." Torres nodded. "What about our ships?" "That's the problem. Our largest vessels are like toys compared to theirs. We need a new approach entirely." President Keller stood before the United Nations, her face broadcast to every corner of Earth. "For centuries, we wondered if we were alone in the universe," she said. "Now we know we are not. But our first contact comes with a choice: hide and hope the storm passes, or stand and fight not just for ourselves, but for all free beings in our galaxy." She gestured to Ambassador Talon, who stood beside her. "The Vesh came to us for advice, for strategies. But Earth has decided to offer more. Today, I am announcing the formation of the Earth Defense Fleet. We will not merely advise. We will fight." Talon's eyes widened in shock. No species had ever volunteered to join another's war against the Dominion. "The enemy believes us primitive," President Keller continued. "They believe us weak. They are about to learn how dangerous a corner human can be." Around the world, military bases buzzed with activity. Retired soldiers reported for duty. Factories switched to wartime production. Scientists worked around the clock, combining Vesh knowledge with human ingenuity. In his private office, Fletcher Williams studied the Dominion battle footage again, looking for patterns, weaknesses. One thing was becoming clear: the Dominion had never faced an enemy that didn't play by the rules. And humans, Humans had never played by anyone's rules but their own. The alarm sounded at 400 hours. 3 Dominion scout ships had entered the solar system, passing Jupiter's orbit at incredible speed. "They're scanning everything," said Communications Officer Parker, her fingers flying across her console. "Asteroids, moons, orbital stations." Captain Jack Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, Earth's newest destroyer now hidden in the shadow of Mars. His ship was small by Dominion standards, but it carried the fruits of a week's frantic work. Hybrid weapons and shields based on Vesh technology. "All hands to battle stations," Torres ordered, "and kill all non-essential power. We stay dark until my mark." The plan was simple but dangerous. Let the Dominion scouts pass by, thinking they'd found nothing but primitive satellites, then hit them from behind. Admiral Hayes called it the sucker punch. Lord Nexus stood on the command deck of his scout vessel, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's lights. His 4 eyes narrowed as they examined the data from Earth. "Primitive," he said, his voice like grinding metal. "Their most advanced weapons wouldn't scratch our auxiliary shields." His second-in-command, Commander Vex, studied a different screen. "They have made contact with the Vesh rebels. Should we call for reinforcements?" Lord Nexus made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 arms. "These humans pose no threat. We will collect samples and report back." "As you wish, my lord." "Now," Torres shouted. The Defiant roared to life, engines burning hot as it accelerated toward the trailing Dominion scout. 5 other Earth vessels emerged from hiding spots around Mars, all converging on the enemy ships. "They're turning to face us," Parker reported. "Charging weapons." Torres gripped his chair. "Fire first salvo. Aim for their engine section." The Defiant fired its modified missiles. The first 2 were shot down by Dominion point defense systems, but the 3rd and 4th struck home. Blue-white energy crackled across the Dominion ship's hull. "Their shields are fluctuating," Parker said, surprise in her voice. The Vesh modifications worked. "All ships, concentrate fire on Target 3. Torres ordered to the fleet. "Don't give them time to adapt." Earth ships swarmed the Dominion scout, firing from multiple angles. The other 2 Dominion vessels moved to protect their damaged ally, but they weren't prepared for human tactics. Small, nuclear-powered attack drones launched from the Earth ships, sacrificing themselves in kamikaze runs against the Dominion shields. On his ship, Lord Nexus watched in disbelief as warning lights flashed across his command console. "Impossible," he growled. "These primitives should not have this technology." Commander Vex stumbled as their ship shook from another hit. The Vesh must have shared their shield frequencies. And these humans, they attack without formation, without honor. A massive explosion rocked the scout formation as one of the Dominion ships lost engine containment. The blast temporarily blinded sensors, and in that moment, Captain Torres ordered all Earth ships to change position. When the Dominion sensors cleared, the Earth fleet seemed to have multiplied. Holographic projections mixed with real ships, all moving in confusing patterns. "We can't distinguish real threats from false ones," Vex reported, panic rising in his voice. Lord Nexus slammed his fist on the console. "Retreat. Back to the fleet. These humans are not the primitives we expected." In Earth's war room, Admiral Hayes watched the Dominion scouts flee the solar system. The celebration around her was subdued. They had won, but this was merely the beginning. Ambassador Talon approached, his eyes wide with astonishment. "You drove them away. No one has ever driven away a Dominion force." "We got lucky," Hayes replied. "We had surprise on our side. That advantage is now gone." Across the room, intelligence analyst Lena Novak was already studying the battle recordings. "Their communications," she said suddenly. "There's a pattern to how they coordinate. If we can crack it." Hayes nodded. "Get me everything you can. Next time, they won't underestimate us." On his retreating ship, Lord Nexus was already preparing his report to the Dominion High Command. These humans were unlike any species they had encountered before. They fought without honor, without rules. For the first time in his long military career, Lord Nexus felt something new stirring in his chest. It was respect, mixed with fear. 3 weeks after the first skirmish, the real attack came. 50 Dominion warships entered the solar system, their massive hulls blocking out stars as they approached. "They're targeting our Mars and Europa colonies first," reported General Porter, pointing to the holographic display in Earth's command center. Standard conquest pattern, according to Vesh records. Admiral Hayes nodded calmly. "Good. That's exactly what we expected." President Keller looked concerned. "There are civilians on those colonies." "Not anymore," Hayes replied. "We evacuated them last week. What the Dominion will find is something else entirely." Lord Nexus stood at the front of the Dominion flagship's bridge. This time, he had come personally to oversee the subjugation of these troublesome humans. "Our forces are approaching the Mars settlement," Commander Vex reported. "No resistance detected." "Strange," Nexus muttered. "After their earlier aggression, I expected a fight." The main screen showed Dominion landing craft touching down on the red Martian soil. Troops marched out in perfect formation, approaching the domed human colony. "The settlement appears abandoned," said a field commander over the comms. "We're proceeding inside tow." The transmission cut off abruptly. A moment later, the entire Martian surface around the landing site erupted in explosions. "What's happening?" Nexus demanded. Vex frantically checked readings. "The humans, they've mined the entire area. Our ground forces are taking heavy casualties." In the command center, Hayes watched the Dominion troops fall into the trap. "Begin Operation Hornet's Nest," she ordered. Across Mars, hidden human fighters emerged from underground bunkers. They were a mix of special forces soldiers and colonial militia, all equipped with Vesh-enhanced weapons. Unlike conventional armies, they didn't form battle lines. Instead, they struck in small groups, hitting Dominion forces and then disappearing into the vast network of tunnels beneath the Martian surface. On Olympus Mons, the largest mountain in the solar system, the Dominion established their command post. They believed the high ground would give them advantage. They were wrong. Deep inside the mountain, mining supervisor Bill Thompson gave the signal. Hundreds of mining drills, repurposed as weapons, broke through the walls and ceilings around the Dominion troops. Industrial mining mechs, normally used to move heavy rocks, now charged Dominion soldiers. "For Earth," shouted Thompson as he piloted his mech straight into a Dominion walker. The machines collided with a screech of metal, but the sturdy mining equipment, built to withstand tons of pressure, held firm. Lord Nexus watched in growing rage as reports came in from all fronts. Europa was worse than Mars. Human submarines moved beneath the ice, striking Dominion landing craft as they tried to establish bases. "This is not how war is conducted," he roared. "They hide like vermin. They use mining equipment as weapons. There is no honor in this." Commander Vex studied the tactical display with growing concern. "My lord, we've lost 18 ships already. The humans are targeting our engines with precision strikes." "How?" "Our shields shoaled. They're using our own attack patterns against us. When our ships move into standard formation, they know exactly where the weak points will be." Back on Earth, Lena Novak worked with her team of analysts, directing the resistance forces in real time based on Dominion communication patterns they had decoded. "They're going to rotate their shields to the front in 30 seconds, she said into her headset. "All ships in Sector 4, prepare to hit their rear quarter when they do." Ambassador Talon watched in awe. "Your people fight like nothing I've ever seen. Not as soldiers, but as predators." Admiral Hayes didn't smile. "This is just the beginning. We're taking heavy losses too." It was true. For every Dominion ship disabled, Earth lost 3 of its own. But they had expected this, planned for it. "The Dominion fleet is pulling back," announced General Porter suddenly. "They're retreating beyond Mars orbit." A cheer went up around the command center, But Hayes raised her hand for silence. "They're not leaving," she said. "They're regrouping. And next time, they won't underestimate us again." On his flagship, Lord Nexus composed a message to the Dominion High Command. It contained only one line: "These humans are worthy of our full attention." A month after repelling the Dominion attack, Earth's War Council gathered in the underground command center. The mood was somber despite their victory. "We can't keep fighting defensive battles," Admiral Hayes said, pointing to the holographic map of the solar system. "Each time they attack, we lose more people and resources. They can replace their losses. We cannot." President Keller frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "Something they'll never expect." Hayes waved her hand over the display, showing stars beyond the solar system. "We take the fight to them." General Porter laughed bitterly. "With what?" "Our fleet was decimated defending Mars and Europa." "Not all of it," Hayes replied. "And the Vesh ships have been repaired. We've also reverse-engineered enough of their technology to upgrade our remaining vessels." Ambassador Talon, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. "You want to attack Dominion territory. No one has ever done that successfully." "Exactly why that they won't be prepared for it," Hayes said. 2 weeks later, a combined fleet of human and Vesh ships slipped away from Earth. Their mission was not to win the war in one stroke, but to bloody the Dominion's nose and show the galaxy that they were vulnerable. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the newly christened UES Vengeance, Earth's first true warship built with Vesh technology. Approaching jump point, his navigator announced. The Vesh had shared their faster-than-light technology, though human engineers had modified it in ways that shocked their alien allies. "All hands brace for jump," Torres ordered. "Remember, we hit the communication hub, plant the package, and get out. No heroics." The ship shuddered as it tore through space, emerging near a massive Dominion installation that served as a relay station for their fleet communications. "They've spotted us," reported Parker from communications. "They're scrambling fighters." Torres nodded calmly. "Right on schedule. Launch Special Operations Team." From the belly of the Vengeance, a small stealth craft detached. Inside, Major Tom Rivera and his team of Special Forces soldiers checked their weapons one last time. "Remember, we need to reach the central data core," Rivera said. "Dr. Novik's virus package has to be uploaded directly to their mainframe." His team nodded grimly. They were about to be the first humans to set foot on a Dominion facility, most likely the last two. As the Vengeance engaged Dominion defenders in a seemingly desperate battle, the stealth craft slipped through the chaos toward the station's maintenance dock. Back on Earth, Dr. Marcus Reed worked tirelessly with Vesh survivors, compiling a database of all conquered species. Using the Vesh's knowledge of subspace communications, he prepared a powerful message. "Is it ready?" asked Lena Novak, looking up from her own work decoding Dominion tactical frequencies. Reed nodded, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "If Rivera's team succeeds, this message will broadcast to every Dominion-controlled world." On his screen was a simple video, scenes of humans fighting back against the Dominion, mixed with footage from Earth's history of resistance against oppression. The message ended with words in 20 different alien languages. "We are coming. Prepare to rise." Major Rivera's team fought their way to the data core, losing 3 soldiers in the process. As Dominion troops closed in, Rivera plugged the small device Novak had given him into the alien computer system. "Upload complete," he reported over his radio, blood seeping from a wound in his side. "Now we just need to get out of here." His second-in-command looked at the approaching Dominion forces and grimaced. "That might be a problem, sir." Back in Earth's war room, Fletcher Williams presented his latest strategy to Admiral Hayes. "I call it the broken anvil," he explained, pointing to supply routes on the star map. "The Dominion focuses all their defense on military targets, but their empire requires constant resource flow to maintain their massive fleets." Hayes studied the plan carefully. "You want to attack their supply ships instead of their warships." "Exactly. No empire in human history has survived when its supply lines were cut. Why should the Dominion be any different? On his flagship, Lord Nexus received alarming reports. Somehow, humans had penetrated deep into Dominion space and attacked a key communication hub. Even worse, resistance movements were suddenly appearing on worlds thought to be completely pacified. For the first time in the Dominion's long history of conquest, they faced an enemy that didn't just defend, but struck back. And this was only the beginning. The meeting room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains was crowded with beings from across the galaxy. Some stood on multiple legs, others floated in special tanks, and a few glowed with inner light. All had one thing in common: their worlds had fallen to the Dominion. Dr. Reed watched in amazement. When the Vesh had first arrived seeking help, Earth had been isolated. Now, 6 months later, representatives from 12 conquered species sat around the table, having risked everything to reach Earth in secret. Admiral Hayes entered the room, her uniform crisp despite the exhaustion evident on her face. The alien representatives fell silent. "Welcome to Earth," she said simply. "We have much to discuss and little time." The tall, insect-like Krell spoke first, his translator converting clicks into English. "The humans have done what we thought impossible. You raided 17 Dominion outposts in 2 months, and lost 9 ships doing it." Hayes replied honestly, "We can't win through raids alone." A liquid-like being rippled in its containment suit. "Then why have you called us here? To tell us there is no hope?" Hayes smiled for the first time. "The opposite. I've called you here because together we can do more than resist. We can win." She activated the holographic display, showing a complex battle plan that spanned dozens of star systems. "This is our strategy for coordinated rebellion. Not one uprising that can be crushed, but many, happening simultaneously across Dominion space." Lena Novak had been working without sleep for 3 days. Her team of human and alien communication experts surrounded her, all focused on the same problem. "The Dominion changes their encryption every 12 hours, explained a Vesh technician. "It's impossible to keep up." Novak shook her head. "Not if we create our own system." She pointed to her screen where a new communication protocol was taking shape, something they've never seen before, based on Earth's old analog methods mixed with Krell hive signaling. A reptilian Sartak leaned forward, eyes widening. "This could work. The Dominion relies on quantum encryption. They would never expect us to use something so primitive yet complex." "Sometimes," Novak replied with a tired smile, "the oldest tricks are the best ones." On a mining world far from Earth, a group of enslaved Tory workers heard the signal hidden in the background radiation of their communication devices. The message was simple. In 3 days, at precisely the same time as uprisings on 6 other worlds, they would strike. A human operative named James Walker, who had infiltrated the mining colony disguised as a trader, provided them with weapons hidden in machinery parts. The Tory had never fought before. Their species was naturally peaceful, but Walker taught them human guerrilla tactics. "You don't need to win," he explained to their leader. "You just need to hold out until help arrives." Lord Nexus stood before the Dominion High Council, his pride damaged, but his resolve stronger than ever. "The human problem has grown," he reported. "They've inspired rebellions on multiple worlds. They're attacking our supply lines instead of our fleets." The Supreme Commander, a massive figure in ornate armor, leaned forward. "Then crush them. Use the World Cleaver." Nexus bowed. "As you command. The weapon is being prepared." Captain Torres received the emergency transmission while patrolling the edge of Dominion space. His blood went cold as he decoded the message from a resistance spy. "The Dominion is deploying the World Cleaver," he reported to Earth, "a weapon capable of shattering a planet's crust." Admiral Hayes immediately called President Keller. "They're planning to make an example of someone. We need to find and destroy that weapon before they use it." "How?" asked Keller. "If it's as powerful as the intelligence suggests." "We'll send Torres," Hayes interrupted. He's closest, and the Vengeance is our most advanced ship. She didn't add what they both knew. It would likely be a suicide mission. When the coordinated rebellions erupted across 7 Dominion worlds simultaneously, the enemy was caught completely unprepared. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they lost control of 3 major planets in a single day. The Alliance of the Oppressed, as the news networks on Earth called it, had drawn first blood. But the Dominion's response would be terrible to behold. The Dominion Supreme Council gathered in their ancient hall, surrounded by trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. For the first time in recorded history, all 9 Supreme Commanders were present in person, not as holograms. "The human contagion spreads," growled the eldest, his armor scarred from battles fought centuries ago. 3 core worlds lost, supply lines disrupted, factory worlds in rebellion. Supreme Commander Vex, recently promoted after Lord Nexus's disgrace, stepped forward. "We must respond with absolute force. I propose we enact the extinction protocols against Earth." The council chamber fell silent. The extinction protocols had only been used twice in Dominion history, against species too dangerous to be allowed to exist. "Approved," said the eldest after a moment. "Begin preparations immediately." On Earth, Dr. Reed burst into the war room, his face pale. "Madam President, Admiral, you need to see this." He placed a data crystal on the table. "We finally decoded the Dominion's genetic archives from the raid on their research station." The holographic display showed alien DNA sequences being taken apart and recombined. "They're not just conquering species," Reed explained, his voice shaking. "They're harvesting genetic material. The Dominion isn't an empire, it's a parasite. They absorb the strongest traits from conquered species to enhance themselves." President Keller's expression hardened. "So that's their true purpose. Not domination. Evolution through conquest." Admiral Hayes studied the data. "This changes everything. We're not just fighting for freedom. We're fighting for survival." Keller stood straight, her decision made. "Then there's only one response." She turned to the communication officer. "Broadcast to all Earth forces and allied species. As of this moment, we are no longer simply defending or conducting limited operations." Her voice grew stronger. "Earth formally declares total war against the Dominion. We will not stop until their ability to threaten any species is completely eliminated." Captain Torres and the crew of the Vengeance approached the massive Dominion shipyard, where the World Cleaver was being prepared. Their ship was now barely recognizable as Earth-made, covered in Vesh stealth technology and weapons from 3 different alien civilizations. "We won't survive this," said his first officer quietly. Torres nodded. "Probably not. But neither will they." He looked at the crew on his bridge. Humans working alongside Vesh, Krell, and even a few Tory engineers. "Send the message to the fleet. Operation Dead Hand begins now." Across Dominion space, Allied ships suddenly changed course, abandoning their positions to strike at seemingly random targets. It made no tactical sense, until the Dominion realized too late that every target was a command and control node identified by Fletcher Williams' strategy team. As the Dominion fleet scrambled to respond to these attacks, the Vengeance slipped through their defensive grid. Lord Nexus, demoted but still commanding the World Cleaver project, received the alarm too late. Human ships were already inside the shipyard's defensive perimeter. "Impossible," he roared. "How do they know where to strike?" On his screen, he could see the Vengeance taking devastating fire, but still pushing forward, directly toward the World Cleaver's docking bay. "They're going to ram us," he realized with sudden clarity. The last transmission from the Vengeance was Captain Torres's voice, calm despite the chaos around him. "For Earth and all free peoples." The explosion ripped through the shipyard, destroying not just the World Cleaver but the entire facility. The greatest space battle in galactic history erupted in the Orion Spur. Led by Admiral Hayes herself, the combined fleet of Earth and 17 formerly conquered species engaged the Dominion's Central Armada. This was no surgical strike or guerrilla action. This was open warfare on a scale never before seen. The desperate all-or-nothing gamble of species fighting for their very existence. As Hayes's flagship took heavy damage, a Dominion dreadnought appeared directly in front of her. On its bridge stood the newly reinstated Lord Nexus, who had survived the shipyard destruction. "You wanted war, human," his transmission came through. "Now you have it." Hayes smiled grimly. "No, you misunderstand." The Vesh begged for help. Humanity responded with total war. "There's a difference." She gave the final order. "All ships, execute Operation Phoenix." Throughout the battlefield, Allied ships initiated the desperate tactic that Fletcher Williams had designed, sacrificing themselves to take down Dominion capital ships. The Dominion had never encountered an enemy willing to die to ensure victory. They had no defense against such resolve. By the battle's end, the Dominion Central Authority had collapsed. Lord Nexus's ship drifted lifeless. And though Earth had paid a terrible price, a new alliance of free worlds was born from the ashes of war. Humanity had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all. Never beg them for help when what you need is total war.